The justice rolled down like water, righteousness like a mighty stream. For our grandsons and granddaughters, remember to remember the dream. Welcome to Songs and Stories from Home, as we continue to remember the dream. This week, Freedom Summer. If I take a moment and close my eyes, in some combination of memory and imagination, I can conjure a moment at the end of the summer of 1954. I've just started second grade. I'm standing by my desk with my hand over my heart. And as Paul Simon says in his song, My Little Town, I'm pledging allegiance to the wall. On Flag Day, at the start of that summer, Congress added the words, under God, to what we were pledging. I had no idea at the time what the final 6 words truly meant or didn't mean, with liberty and justice for all. 10 years later, as I was getting ready for my senior year in high school in my not-so-big town, there were 1,000 volunteers, most of them young and white, all of whom had made out their wills, joining thousands of mostly blacks in Mississippi for what was being called Freedom Summer. The goal was to make those 6 words with liberty and justice for all more true and more real for everyone. 56 summers later, the streets are alive with people who think it's time, actually long past time, for this country to keep its promise and its pledge, and for those 6 words to be meaningful for everyone who recites them, whether standing proudly or kneeling humbly. A pledge worth making, a promise worth keeping, a dream worth remembering. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let justice roll down like water, righteousness like a mighty stream. For our grandsons and granddaughters, remember to remember the dream. The pilgrimage stopped in Neshoba County, Mississippi, where in June of 1964, 3 young men, James Chaney, Mickey Schwerner, and Andrew Goodman, were kidnapped, terrorized, tortured, and killed. They were participating in what was known as Freedom Summer in Mississippi, where 1,000 mostly white volunteers had come from out of state, joining thousands of mostly blacks from Mississippi with the goal of registering voters, setting up freedom schools, as well as freedom libraries. Andrew Goodman was a volunteer who on June 21st had just arrived. He was joining James Chaney, a black activist from Mississippi aligned with CORE, and Mickey Schwerner, a CORE organizer. Together, they drove from Meridian, Mississippi, to investigate the bombing of Mount Zion Church. They never made it back. Part of our pilgrimage experience included stopping at the rebuilt Mount Zion Church. There's a small marker remembering the young men. Our bus then went through Philadelphia, Mississippi, and by the jail where the boys were briefly held, and then we continued on toward Meridian, turning on a lesser road before stopping at what seemed to be the middle of nowhere, where we all got out of the bus. We were fortunate enough to have Bob Zellner with us. He took Rita Schwerner, Mickey's wife, to visit Lyndon Johnson after the president agreed to meet with her sometime during the 44 days between the murder and when the bodies were found. Bob Zellner told us how the place we were now standing was the place where James Chaney was chained to a tree, tortured, beaten, killed. He explained that the people who kidnapped the boys didn't choose the spot because it was out of the way. In fact, it was on the way to one of their homes. And the men wanted to be able to drive by the spot every day and be proud of what they did. And as he talked, he began to cry, which seemed like the most natural thing in the world, because as he spoke, that's what most of us were doing. And when he finally composed himself, he said, "You know, I never cried at the time. I didn't cry for years. None of us did. We simply held it inside and kept doing what we felt we needed to do." And then suddenly he said, "Shrunken heart syndrome." And I thought he might be explaining that he felt his heart had somehow shrunk because of all he'd lived through. But that wasn't it at all. The only thing I can figure out, he continued, was that for people to have treated other people so badly for hundreds of years, they couldn't survive without shrunken hearts. And then we just stood there. Nothing to say. And finally, in the fading light, one of the locals who accompanied us joined our circle. And he told us we had to leave. It was getting dark. And it wasn't safe to be there after dark. Paul Simon was a friend and a classmate of Andrew Goodman's at Queen's College. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I am on your side. Oh, when times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay sail on, silver girl,